Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today we have the opportunity to discuss climate legislation with a real shot of becoming law. USEIT passed the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works by unanimous consent last year. That includes Senators Barrasso, Bernie Sanders, and Ed Markey. So that's a pretty good breadth of support. And I'm sorry that the Nature Conservancy representative couldn't be here. I suppose that's good news, bad news, because the baby's a nice event, but clearly it would have been better if it was tomorrow, but we can't plan that out. That's nature, I guess. So what the bill does is it provides federal research support of a suite of CCUS technologies, including $35 million to provide competitive grants for technologies that can cost-effectively remove carbon dioxide out of the air through direct air capture, and $50 million to support research and technologies for commercial uses of captured carbon dioxide. Second, it codifies an existing interpretation that comes from the Obama administration that CO2 pipelines and CCUS infrastructure projects could be considered covered projects under FAST 41 if they're also federal actions under the jurisdiction of federal agencies. It does not weaken NEPA. And I think people have discussed a lot of the need for developing these kinds of carbon capture facilities. There's only 2 commercial direct air capture projects now. The largest is a plant in Alabama that only captures 4,000 tons per year, and 1 active CCUS project capturing CO2 for permanent storage in a saline reservoir, and that plant is based in Illinois. We need to accelerate this, and this is our opportunity to do that. I just want to address briefly the EOR issue, the enhanced oil recovery. No one is claiming that linking EOR to captured CO2 is a panacea. Clearly, in the long run, we have a lot of techniques we would like to do to phase out the use of fossil fuels. Among those might be pricing carbon and providing incentives. But I would just note that we have, many of us in this committee have signed a letter to preserve the CAFE standards, which are intended to ensure that cars, as they come off the production line, are more efficient. They use less gas. But we've implicitly acknowledged by doing that we are going to have gas cars for a while. Even if today we decided that every car would be electric, it would take about 25 years for the fleet to turn over. So in the meantime, capturing CO2 for EOR in the near term can reduce the carbon footprint of that oil and gas we will be using. And so that's all to the good. It's not a panacea. It's not where we want to end, but it's a good place to start. I want to begin by asking Mr. Mackler about this, the concern about streamlined CO2 permitting. And there's a concern that would lead to an increase in oil production that would derail our climate goals. But according to the Clean Air Task Force, if U.S. EOR expanded to its maximum potential, this was all done with CO2 from direct air capture, the atmospheric benefit would be substantial. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do agree that you know, in the limit, if we're talking about in the limit here, if direct air capture were deployed to its full potential to meet demands for EOR, there would very likely be a substantial climate benefit, because if direct air capture technologies were married with the best resources for producing oil and storing CO2, you could conceive of a project that was actually producing net carbon neutral oil. And so if that was your goal, it could be achieved through direct air capture. And it's our view at the Bipartisan Policy Center that when it comes to climate risks, the real problem is carbon and CO2 and not necessarily fossil fuels. We need to be looking at the carbon accounting.
Right. And so the notion is that in the short term, at least while we're using fossil fuels, we'd like the lowest carbon output as possible, correct?
That's right. There's a net benefit from using captured CO2 to produce the oil, so we should be doing that as we transition to a lower carbon economy.
And in the long run, we're not getting away necessarily from transitioning to a lower carbon economy. But we're also potentially developing technologies that could draw carbon out of the atmosphere and really do what the IPCC said we had to do, the United Nations.
That's exactly right. You're buying down the cost of developing and scaling these technologies, and at the same time, leveraging those economics to build out a infrastructure, CO2 pipelines, most importantly, that can then be used later just for storage.
Okay, thank you so much.